This is the Basilica de la Sagrada Familia, or the Church of the Holy Family, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and flagship creation of world-famous Catalan architect Antoni Gaudi. And after 140 years, it's nearly completed. But I'm not here as just another tourist. I'm here to crack the code of Gaudi's genius and figure out the mysteries hidden in the stone and stained glass. Why did Gaudi design this mesmerizing monument the way he did? And why has it taken so long to complete? I promise you the answer will turn your head upside down. Let's figure this out together. I'm Ricky, and this is 2 Bit Vinci. This video is sponsored by Narwal. It's June 7th, 1926, and a ragged old man staggers along a busy Barcelona street. Suddenly, a discordant clang pierces the air. A tram, its bell silent due to some recent repairs, bears down on him. In a flash, time seemed to warp. Did he see the tram? Did he hear its ominous approach? No. The man was lost in the labyrinthine geometry of his own mind while he was counting the beads in his rosary, deep in prayer. His unkempt appearance and having no identification on him led passerbys to assume he was a beggar. No one paid much attention to him except for a newsboy who started yelling for help. The man woke up in a hospital bed, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. He was taken to the Hospital de la Santa Cruz, a public hospital known for treating the less fortunate. His first thoughts were not of his health, but of the project he had devoted the last 40 years of his life to. Because of the delays in getting proper medical treatment, the man died 3 days later on June 10th, 1926. The man of the story is none other than Antoni Gaudi, the renowned Catalan architect responsible for designing one of the most iconic buildings in the religious world, the Sagrada Familia. His untimely death is just one of the many reasons why the most amazing church ever designed was delayed and remains unfinished over 140 years later. But why did Gaudi dedicate most of his life to the creation of this seemingly unattainable dream? And why does it look like this? To answer that first question, I asked myself, who commissioned the temple? And why did they hire Gaudi in the first place? My research led me to a bookseller named Bocabella. Bocabella was a successful bookseller and printer in Barcelona who founded the Association of Devotees of St. Joseph, aka the Josephites. This was a pious society that promoted the values of the Christian family. It was in the late 1860s when Bocabella took a trip to Rome and visited the Basilica of St. Peter and the sanctuary of Loreto. He was amazed by the beauty and majesty of these sacred places and decided to dedicate his fortune and his life to replicating this majesty in his hometown. So in 1881, he bought this plot of land in the Eixample district in Barcelona and got to work. So at first I was thinking, this guy must have been a millionaire to buy such prime real estate here in Barcelona. But it turns out back in 1881, this was mostly farmland and quite cheap. Most of Barcelona was built around this cathedral. And it's hard to imagine today thinking of this bustling metropolis as just farmland, but that's what it was until this cathedral went in. Bocabella first hired a young architect named Francisco de Paula de Villar, who had designed several churches and chapels in Catalonia. He asked him to design a temple in the Gothic style, similar to the sanctuary of Loreto, that would promote a focus on family, and thus was eventually named the Basilica de la Sagrada Familia, which is Spanish for the Church of the Holy Family, referring to Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, and her husband, Joseph. Construction began on March 19, 1882, but Bocabella wasn't satisfied with de Paula's design. He felt that the project lacked something. It lacked grandeur. These disagreements led to de Paula resigning, and a professor of architecture and a friend of Bocabella, John Martorell, recommended a young and talented student of his, and his name was Antoni Gaudi. We'll get back to Professor Martorell before the end of the video because he is central to why Gaudi designed the Sagrada Familia the way he did. You won't want to miss that. There's something magical about the combination of classic Gothic style with modern building methods and technology. And we can all use a little modern tech in our lives, especially when it comes to chores. Here's a super quick engineering deep dive of the genius of our sponsor this week, the Narwal Freo X Ultra robot vacuum. It has industry-leading 8,200 pascals of suction power and the world's first zero-tangling aerodynamics floating brush. Unlike most robot vacuums where hair gets tangled on the ends, the Freo X has a single-arm conical-shaped brush that directs dust and hair into the dustbin, and the U-shaped duct gives better suction and prevents clogging. Its built-in mop can lift up to 12 millimeters automatically over rugs and carpet, and its curved triangular design means better mopping coverage and less streaks. Its 1-liter dustbin is good for up to 7 weeks, and it even auto-cleans the mop as needed in its dock. It'll even dry the mop head for maximum hygiene. The vacuum design is so good that we run it at lower speeds, making this one of the quietest robot vacs I've ever seen. Even the dock cleaning is super quiet. The app is brilliant and easy to use, and its LiDAR guidance and obstacle avoidance is fantastic. The early bird pricing starts on February 20th. Pay $29.99 and you'll get a $329.99 discount. So check the links in the description below and sign up for the early bird pricing. Huge thanks to Narwal and you for supporting the show. Little did Bocabella know that in Gaudi's hands, this would become one of the most ambitious construction projects of all time. And there's no way he could have known. I mean, at the time, Gaudi was in his 20s, had barely any experience at all, and had only built a gazebo and designed a couple of lampposts. There's no way to overstate the grandiosity of the Sagrada Familia. It's a true architectural, engineering, and storytelling masterpiece. It's also one of the largest religious buildings in the world, but we'll get back to that here in a minute. Gaudi went above and beyond Bocabella's vision and made it his own. The structure's floor plan is actually a typical Latin cross layout, which is common for many Catholic churches. So it has a central nave, that's the long part right here, a transept, which is the rectangle that cuts across the central nave to make the shape of the cross, and an apse, which is the back part of the church you see here. But one of the things that caught my attention is that he designed the church to have 3 facades. I'd never heard of a church having more than one. I started looking at other churches to see if I found something similar, and nothing. Most Catholic churches only had one facade in the front of the central nave. That's where you normally go in through. They may have doors on the sides, but the sides are usually flat and plain. Only the front is heavily embellished. So why did he do that? To tell a story. The story of the Holy Family and Jesus' life. Gaudi dedicated the Nativity facade to the birth of baby Jesus and his early life.
This is the Nativity facade. You can see it's adorned with imagery of the wise men, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and other birth of Jesus Christmas celebrations. But the big thing is you can just tell the difference in age of this cathedral. This facade was built way earlier, as you can tell. And as you look over to there, the Glory facade, which we'll go to here in a second, which was built a lot newer. That's one of the funny things that happens when you build a church over 160 years.
The Passion facade is dedicated to his crucifixion and death. And the Glory facade, the most grandiose of all, and which will be the main entrance to the temple, is dedicated to his glory and resurrection. One thing that kept bugging me was, how many towers does this church have, and why so many? I mean, from far away, it kind of looks like a giant chandelier full of half-molten candles. The Sagrada Familia will have a total of 18 towers. 18! Plus a bunch of other minor spires in different shapes and sizes. Each of the 3 facades will have 4 bell towers for a total of 12, dedicated to each of the 12 apostles. Right where the central nave meets the transept, there will be a square of 4 larger and taller towers dedicated to the 4 evangelists, Matthew, Barnabas, Jude, and Simon. One in the back over the apse is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The main tower will be right in the middle of the 4 evangelist towers and will be dedicated to Jesus Christ. That central tower will be the tallest of the tall. When you look at this building up close and personal, you realize how none of the pictures and videos you see online really do it justice. Gaudi's unique Gothic naturalism style really pops out at you. It's a mixture of gargoyles, plants, trees, animals, and religious figures that look kind of grotesque from far away, but kind of beautiful up close. But if you thought the outside was crazy, the inside is where all the crazy engineering goes on. You won't find many statues or sculptures inside the Sagrada Familia, only 4. There's one on each end of the cross that makes up the floor plan, one of the Virgin Mary in the side of the Passion facade, one of St. Joseph, Jesus' dad, on the Nativity side, Jesus himself right up on top of the altar, and finally behind the Glory facade you'll find the patron saint of Catalonia, St. George. The rest is a whole lot of space. The columns, many columns of different shapes, sizes, and colors. Gaudi envisioned a structure that resembled a forest, following the Gothic naturalism style. The pillars have different colors because they're built of different construction materials depending on the weight they have to support. Thick columns of red porphyry, a volcanic rock, are the strongest and hold most of the weight of the massive towers on top. Smaller, dark columns are made of basalt. And the white columns that project the exterior light are made of granite. Now, I just said that the inside is where the engineering magic happens, but you may be wondering, why is that? Here's why. I visited Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris once before the last fire. There's a huge difference between both structures, even though they're both Gothic. Notice something different between this and this? The roofs and towers of Sagrada Familia don't have buttresses to support the weight. Imagine you have a wall trying to hold up a heavy roof. The wall might bend or even buckle and break under the pressure. Buttresses are thick, sturdy structures that lean against the wall at an angle, pushing back against the roof's weight, preventing the wall from bending and collapsing. Notre Dame Cathedral is famous for its magnificent flying buttresses, and it's considered a prime example of Gothic engineering. So how the hell did Gaudi design such a huge structure with huge vaulted ceilings without buttresses and make it all so it wouldn't collapse? How did he even know that it wouldn't collapse? That's where his professor Joan Martorell comes into the picture. Martorell taught Gaudi a revolutionary engineering and construction technique called graphic statics. This is a common technique used today to calculate structures and make them stable, but requires heavy mathematical calculations, especially for complex structures. And let's face it, there's nothing as complex as this building. But Gaudi didn't have a computer, and he famously left behind no documentation with structural calculations. What he did leave behind were models, many of them. At first I figured, no big deal, that's got to be really common for any architect. Then I saw this photo. I'm sure it doesn't escape you that this church is upside down. And that's because these aren't your typical architectural models. These are called hanging chain models, and Gaudi became famous for them. This is why most people consider Gaudi a verifiable genius. Let me explain why. These models are like 3D versions of graphical statics, allowing him to visualize and test different structural solutions without going through all the complex math, which is brilliant. When they're hanging upside down, the entire structure is perfectly balanced and all the columns, arches, and ceilings are all at their equilibrium positions and shapes. If you want the structure to support weight, you just hang a piece of weight from the chain and it'll stretch into the perfect shape for that particular load. Then when you flip it around, you're flipping the sense in which the weight pulls on the structure, from pulling to compression. But everything still points along the same direction, so everything is still in optimum equilibrium. But that's not all. These hanging models are the reason why Sagrada Familia looks so weird and organic. All the shapes of the vaulted ceilings and the columns are modeled after the way these chains hang while being pulled down by gravity. That's why Gaudi was able to design using uncommon shapes like hyperboloids, parabolas, and catenary curves in the early 1900s. That's how he was able to design columns that resemble tall trees that branch out only at the top when reaching the ceiling. Okay, that sounds good in theory, but how on earth was he expected to then build this behemoth? And that's where the troubles began. I get goosebumps from imagining what deciding to build something like this would have felt like back in 1882. It's a testament to both Gaudi and Bocabella's faith that they decided to go for it. From everything I've read, Gaudi always knew he wouldn't see the church finished in his lifetime, even if he lived to be 100. So did Bocabella, and it's no wonder why. What do you guys think? Did Gaudi make a design hoping that sometime in the future, someone would be able to figure it all out and build it? Or did he know something everyone else at the time didn't? And while you're mulling that over, don't forget to go down there and hit that like button if you're having fun with this video. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our future videos. It goes a long way to helping us make more content like this. When Gaudi died in 1926, only the Nativity facade had been started and had taken shape. It would only be finished 4 years later, but at least Gaudi himself oversaw most of its construction. The construction has been going on and off for the past 141 years. For context, the Great Pyramid of Giza only took 20 to 27 years to complete, so the Sagrada Familia has so far taken 6 times as long. But in the grand scheme of things, while this has been the longest ongoing construction project today, it's by no means the longest in history. Notre Dame, for example, took 182 years to complete, but that was back in the 12th century. What's amazing to me is that Sagrada Familia is taking so long despite today's more advanced construction techniques, which we'll get back to in a minute. So I asked myself, why haven't they finished Sagrada Familia yet? And how much longer is it going to take? The first major obstacle was Gaudi's death. This immediately halted construction for nearly 2 years, while the architect's studio grappled with the loss and the future of the project. Gaudi's plans and models were incomplete, and his unique design approach posed unique challenges for the rest of his successors. Dominic Sugranes, Gaudi's assistant, eventually took the lead, along with other architects like Francis de Paula Nobet and Joseph Maria Juhol. But in 1939, disaster struck again. The Spanish Civil War broke out and the Sagrada Familia was attacked by anarchists.
The construction was halted in 1939. Builders had to perform massive restorations, and they were hit with everything from recessions in the Spanish economy to shifting priorities that slowed the eventual progress.
But things changed in 1979 when another young architect, a 22-year-old graduate student from New Zealand called Mark Burry, joined the program. He was the first to use computers to model and calculate the structural elements of the incredibly complex Passion facade. He was the one who introduced cutting-edge CNC milling machines, which were robots that could carve stone 24/7. We're talking 1988, so this was groundbreaking tech at the time. Thanks to CNC milling machines working day and night, the construction team could make one column every 166 days. That's half a year working 24/7. Fast forward a couple of decades later, and the church finally had its roof and could hold religious masses. The new construction team has 2026 as the goal to finish the basic structure. This would be awesome since it marks the 100th anniversary of Gaudi's death and would mark 144 years of construction, which is a dozen years, or a gross in Hobbit counting. But there's still one challenge on the horizon. It took me a while to get a good grasp of the shapes and orientations of the Sagrada Familia. But then something hit me. And it isn't immediately obvious because of how amazing it is. But this entrance here is only one of the two lateral entrances to the church.
The main entrance, the glory facade behind me, still hasn't been built. And there's something really disappointing about that. Because as you can see here, this is going to have to require that we demolish some residential buildings to complete. And as you can imagine, the locals aren't thrilled about that. But this here would probably have to all get bought out and demolished to complete this glory facade. Apparently, according to Gaudi's original designs, there was a massive staircase in the front of the church. And that would totally make sense, right? But most of those sketches and plans were lost during the Spanish Civil War. And so the government didn't see a problem with granting permission for residential complexes to be built in this region. But as they started to reach that eventuality of building this thing and completing it, this will become the most contentious and controversial point of the story of Sagrada Familia.
Without the frontal staircase, the glory facade will lose most of its shine and, well, glory. But to build it, they'd have to displace around 3,000 people currently living in that region.
I mean, imagine if you were told, hey, buy this commercial or residential real estate. It'll overlook the Sagrada Familia and you invested your life savings into it. Only to then later be told, actually, we're gonna have to tear all that down and reclaim that land. It's just tough for all parties involved. I've talked to some of the locals around, and there's definitely a point of contention. This, yes, is the pride of Spain and Barcelona, but it's also this complicated eminent domain problem as well. But ultimately, sound off in the comments below if you have the right answer. Maybe somebody in Barcelona will read these comments and figure this all out. All right, that is a look at the hidden engineering marvel that is La Sagrada Familia. If you like that video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for future videos, and we'll catch you guys next week.